there's the famous story of the looting of the temples. And one of the things that was interesting was in the Holy of Holies, there was nothing there. This completely flipped out the people who, the anti-Semites involved in the destruction of the temple. What's the conclusion they draw from nothing being there? Jews are actually atheists. If Jews don't eat pork, it's because they worship the pig. In other words, the anti-Semite fashions the Jew to meet his own needs. If that makes sense.
Well, interesting, Dr. Laitman. What does Kabbalah have to say about the dynamics of hate?
Yes.
Where does that come from? And specifically, to your point, the hate towards Jews.
Well, first of all, it has deep roots in ancient history, dating back to ancient Mesopotamia. This is also mentioned in the scriptures in one way or another. Back to this ancient kingdom of Mesopotamia or Babylon, this was sort of a center of human culture back then, the cradle of human civilization in a sense. And that civilization was developing from a kind of a primitive way of life where humanity was divided to groups and tribes and clans, and they were kind of living, coexisted, but then they started rising in conflict, in terms of conflict and social division. Essentially, the human egoism was developing. And then what we hear of as Abraham, they were actually, that Abraham and people around him, they were priests, they were spiritual leaders, religious leaders, who were serving the public in that ancient Mesopotamia. Sort of like social workers, to put it in today's terms. And they saw that people are becoming more egotistic, that people are becoming more in conflict with each other. And they looked at what's happening and they realized that this is the exponential growth of the human ego. And that's why people stopped feeling each other like kin. They stopped instinctively being together like a single person, like a single soul, if you want to call it that way, like a single nation. All those Babylonians began to be more individualistic and began to fight with each other, essentially. And so they knew that something needs to be done about it. So what they found, what Abraham found in his research, so to speak, is that what needs to happen is to rebalance society, which means they need to be re-educated towards unity, solidarity, love, connection. So that's why he was the first one to start talking about love thy friend as thyself, that we all have to connect, even though we don't want to, even though we naturally are inclined to be divided. But if we continue with that tendency, we'll just be at war with each other until we kill each other. And that created a lot of, this new ideology created a conflict with King Nimrod. So essentially, that King Nimrod told Abraham and the Abrahamic group, take your people and get out of here. So Abraham took the people who followed him, and they started moving out of ancient Mesopotamia towards what we call the land of Canaan. But since then, there was a group, which we call a nation, but originally it's not a nation. It's a group of people who united based on an ideology. And the ideology was, we have to rise above human egoism, so that, as it was called, love covers all crimes, love covers all differences. We have to connect above our differences. That was the root of Judaism, the initial root of Judaism, which Kabbalah references, the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah references to this day. And so, over time, people couldn't keep that condition of love thy friend as thyself, of living in social cohesion, of raising their level of unity above their differences, which requires continuous effort and work in human connection, in building positive bonds. And so they didn't make that happen, and that's where religions emerged. First Judaism, and then Christianity, and then Islam. And so you can see also what's written in the Torah, that Abraham sent gifts to the eastern part of the world. That's also the origin of the Eastern teachings that we're familiar with. And then there's many different kinds of belief systems and faiths and religions that essentially originated because they needed to replace that method of human connection, as if to compensate for it. The original method of Kabbalah talks about building human connection to the level of love covers all differences. Love thy friend as thyself. And that is essentially the rule by which human beings can coexist. But since that point in time, there was a division, a separation between the wisdom of Kabbalah, the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah, and all the religions and belief systems. And because Judaism originated in the wisdom of Kabbalah, and it belongs to the wisdom of Kabbalah to some extent, then all the other religions and belief systems have this deep-seated animosity and hatred towards Judaism, towards the Jews. But it is deeply embedded in human society. And so it can't be just healed or you can't fight it. In sometimes in history it goes up, sometimes it goes down, but there is a unique relationship towards or attitude towards that Abrahamic group. Since then, of course, that group went through a lot of ups and downs and different dispersions and reconnections and so on. But still, humanity relates to that group differently. They identify a different attitude to life that exists in these people. And it's true that they don't have a God, because their actual God is love and unity among all. So they don't really belong to all the other religions. That was the original worldview and faith and belief and so on, that everyone must achieve unity that covers all differences. That's the genuine core of Judaism, or the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah. Jews themselves today are unaware of what I'm saying. Most of them. A lot of them even despise the wisdom of Kabbalah because it necessitates working on general unity and love between everyone. However, the Kabbalists find themselves kind of pushed aside and in a very different place from religions, including Judaism. And to this day, this is the relationship. However, with regards to the hatred towards the people of Israel, towards the Jews, it is because at the foundation of Judaism, there was this knowledge, this ideal of love thy friend as thyself. And that's what ultimately human evolution is pushing us towards. Humanity has to achieve that, but it does no longer know about it. Jews are unaware of that being something they need to show the world and present to the world. And that's why, instinctively, there is this deep-seated demand towards the Jews, because they don't deliver this unity for humanity surrounding that principle of love, the work on love, covering all of the human ego, all the differences, all the crimes, as it's called. I wrote about this a lot and at length. I can say a lot more, but let me stop here.